Volkswagen says that this GTI is front-wheel drive, but its dynamics say otherwise. 273 pounds of torque through the front wheel should mean understeer, torque steer, and drama. Instead, something totally different. So let's talk about what front-wheel drive means in 2025. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the GTI has been the hot hatch benchmark for years. This one, however, weighs almost 3,200 pounds, costs over $40,000, and relies more on electronics than ever before. And for me, this is a fan favorite. I've owned 4, raced 1, and driven dozens, of course, and the question in my mind, does all of this tech improve the driving experience? And before we get into what it's like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. For 2025, the biggest change is, of course, that the manual is no longer available. Pour one out, my friends. That said, styling has been updated and the steering wheel has reverted to actual buttons and no haptics on that wheel now, thankfully. Under the hood is that 2-liter turbocharged 4 makes 241 horsepower from 5,600 RPM. And fun fact, 273 pounds of peak torque arrives at 1,600 RPM and stays until 4,500 RPM. That's a 2,900 RPM plateau flatter than Kansas and twice as useful. Transmission's a 7-speed dual clutch. It is front-wheel drive. There is an electronically controlled limited slip diff that can send 100% of torque to either front wheel, and it has brake-based torque vectoring. Steering's variable ratio and electrically assisted. McPherson struts at the front, multi-link at the rear. This one is an Autobahn, so it has adaptive dampers. Fun fact, spring rates are 5% stiffer at the front, 15% stiffer in the rear than the Mark 7. Those percentages mean nothing to 90% of viewers, but the other 10% just nodded approvingly, and you know who you are. 4-wheel disc brakes, of course, and the rotors are pretty massive. Wheels and tires are 18s or 19s, and curb weight is right around 3,200 pounds. The E-diff sends more torque to the wheel that has more grip. This channel sends content to those of you who subscribe. About 20% of you are subscribed, which means 80% are getting content but not telling the algorithm you want more of it. If you want reviews that actually explain what diffs like this mean to drivers like us, instead of just reading spec sheets, subscribe. It takes just 2 seconds and it tells YouTube to show you the next one. Before we continue with this car, I need to share some numbers that'll make you rethink where you might park tonight. This segment is sponsored by CarLock. Look, I get it. Nobody wants to hear theft statistics, but here's the reality. 126 vehicles are stolen every single hour in the United States. That's more than 2 cars every minute. And if you're driving something like this, or a sports car, or a built project truck, you're not just a target, you're a premium target. Here's what really gets me. Thieves aren't using crowbars anymore. They're using laptops. They'll walk up to your car with what looks like a Nintendo, clone your key fob signal, and drive away like they own the thing. Takes about 5 minutes. Your steering wheel lock, completely useless when they never had to break anything in the first place. That's exactly why CarLock caught my attention. Real-time GPS tracking with instant notifications anywhere in the world. Engine starts, I know immediately. Someone touches the car, my phone goes off. Device gets unplugged, loud alarm on my phone, plus there are extension cables and hardwiring options to hide it completely. The peace of mind is worth it. When you've invested this much time, money, and effort in a car, or you're driving something that thieves love, $10 a month is nothing compared to losing the whole thing. Check the links in the description. Use my code BRIANMAKSECL for 10% off on Amazon. Plus, you get an extra 14 days free when you activate, because these numbers aren't getting better anytime soon.
And listen, I'm also giving away a complete CarLock system before the end of November. Hit up makse.com/giveaway to enter.
With that handled, let's focus on the good stuff about the car we're testing. For the task at hand, the seating position is absolutely perfect. Starts with these fantastic seats, and steering column has plenty of adjustment. The steering wheel is shaped perfectly for this job, save for the flat bottom bed. I know some of you like it. I really don't care for it. And then I've got a great interface to the pedals, strong dead pedal, and I don't think this seating position could be any more perfect. This isn't an accident. This is intentionality from people who understand what driver interfaces are supposed to be. Every control you need while driving is within reach without stretching. That sounds basic, but drive any modern crossover with controls scattered like a scavenger hunt and you'll understand why this matters. And Volkswagen's designers assumed you'd actually drive this GTI and all of the controls are arranged accordingly. Now these seats, let's talk about them. For starters, love the non-leather upholstery, that's for sure, but they're shaped perfectly, they're wonderfully supported, they're bolstered enough to hold you in place when the corners get interesting, just like here. Even though we got a little extra water on the road and a little less grip, no issues. Wow, this thing's hilarious. I love the way this pulls out of corners. Plus, they're comfortable enough for a day-long road trip and aggressive enough for a track day. Form follows function, and the function is keeping your spine aligned while you hustle a hatchback. And if it were up to me, like a good dictator, the cloth upholstery would be the only upholstery in all GTI trims. With respect to ergonomics, let's address the elephant in the showroom, the buttons here on the steering wheel. For 3 years, Volkswagen committed to haptic touch controls, no physical feedback, just smooth surfaces and hope. I think a lot of owners complained, reviews murdered them, and Volkswagen, in a move rarer than a humble BMW driver, admitted they were wrong. These are real buttons. They click, they respond. You can find them without looking. This is what accountability looks like in automotive form. These buttons represent probably billions in development costs, swallowed pride, and the simple acknowledgement that humans have fingers for a reason. And I'd like to take credit for that feedback of those haptic buttons, but my tweets only had 4 likes and one of them was my wife. This infotainment system's better than what was here before, but it's not as good as other systems that are out there. And on one hand, I do like this big screen because it gives me everything I want. On the other, I'm driving a driver's car. It's a GTI, and as far as I'm concerned, it should have a smaller, less obvious infotainment screen. Now, this is the Autobahn, so it has all of the luxury features, all of the creature comforts that make sense if this is your daily driver. And no, this isn't a discussion about features and luxuries, but how this actually works in the real world for drivers like us. This Autobahn has a heads-up display, 3-zone climate control, a very nice audio system, and that, my friends, is a luxury creep, the slow transformation of an affordable hot hatch into a junior premium compact. Is it better? Objectively, yes. But here's the tension. The original GTI philosophy was simplicity, lightweight, and accessible performance. This thing weighs almost 3,200 pounds, which is 1,400 pounds more than the Mark I GTI. You're getting more car, more refinement, and more equipment, but somehow in that equation, something intangible was lost. The question in my mind is whether this is still a GTI or if it's moved on to something else with the GTI badge. In terms of spaciousness, well, you know what you're getting, and for most people, it's very usable. Here in the front row, lots of room. I can kind of fit behind myself in this seating position, and for those who want to know, I'm 5'10" on a good day. And under the hatch, I've got all my gear and room for more, but on a day-to-day basis, on an everyday basis for me, GTI would work perfectly for me. It would accommodate my snowboards, bicycles, golf clubs, everything, you name it. And that's the whole point of a GTI, which is to be an excellent all-around car. Visibility is excellent. There's backup cameras and sensors to make parking easy, but just the innate visibility here is excellent. Overall, excellent by modern standards, but that's also kind of like saying you're the tallest person in a room full of jockeys. Here's what 241 horsepower, 273 pounds of torque feels like in this GTI. It's immediate, it's linear, and it's deceptively quick. 0 to 60 happens in a few ticks under 6 seconds, like 5.5, 5.7, something like that, on a perfect surface. And that kind of acceleration is accessible all the time. Yeah, it makes peak torque at 1,600 RPM, and this thing pulls harder off idle than my Labrador Retriever seeing his girlfriend. That torque curve holds flat until 4,500 RPM. Roll onto the throttle at 30 miles an hour in third gear, and the boost arrives immediately. No waiting, no drama, just sustained forward momentum that builds and doesn't quit. This isn't explosive power that shoves you into the back of the seat. It's relentless torque that keeps pulling corner after corner, passing situation after passing situation. And here's the thing about 241 horsepower in 2025. Enough to close gaps on the highway without any drama, and not enough to get you arrested every time you use every one of those horses. It's quick enough to be fun, but not quick enough that anyone is going to be scared of 241 horsepower. The 7-speed dual clutch is like a philosophical statement designed as hardware. Shifts take place in 200 milliseconds. It's faster than you could do with a manual gearbox, that's for sure. In comfort mode, it's smooth and docile, upshifting early to maximize fuel economy. Switch to sport and becomes aggressive, holds gears until redline, downshifts multiple gears under heavy braking, and delivers throttle blips on downshifts without you asking. It's a computer managing 2 clutches and 7 gear ratios better than any human could. Some people hate that. They want control, involvement, and the romance of a manual gearbox. And yes, I still do, but here's the reality. This dual clutch is smoother, faster, and more efficient, and it actually gives you paddles if you want to pretend that you're going to be involved in the shifting process. 273 pounds of torque going to the front wheels. 20 years ago, that sentence would have ended with, and massive torque steer. But there's none, zero. Pin the throttle from a standstill and the GTI hooks up, tracks straight, and accelerates with zero drama. How, you ask? The E-diff constantly manages torque distribution between the front wheels and a symphony of electronic systems working together so seamlessly you don't notice them working at all. You just notice the car goes exactly where you point it, even under full throttle. This is modern front-wheel drive engineering at its peak, taking an architecture format with fundamental limitations and solving those limitations through technology. And the purists will say something's missing, maybe, but torque steer was never charming. This is better. Now, when it comes to handling, this is definitely the best handling GTI I have ever experienced. It corners flat, it's exceptionally well balanced, as we'll get into. The brakes are fantastic, the steering is fantastic, and then these adaptive dampers are just brilliant. They're a total game changer, and when I first got into the menus of this GTI and found that there were 10 levels of damping, it just blew me away. And no, you probably can't discern one from the other, but certainly from opposite ends of the spectrum, you can definitely do that. And the best part that I love about the whole electronics package is that there is a custom drive mode, so I can set the car's parameters to suit me, and that, of course, includes soft damping when we're on public roads, because in this part of the world, the roads are horrific. Now, I love this corner combination because it throws a vertical corner into the mix, but just brilliant. Brakes, fantastic. Scrub the speed. Turn in is immediate, and then up over the hill. Fantastic. Steering is so precise here. Really dig that. Now this is awesome. Transitions very quickly, and then pulling out of the corner, brilliant. And then we've got all that torque. Wow. Now let's have a look at the brakes again. Strong bite, very precise control. And then coming out of the corner, I am astonished. I'm not getting any tugging at the wheel. There's no hint of torque steer here, even here on a short radius corner. This thing is just brilliant, blows my mind. And the dynamics of this GTI transform the meaning of hot hatch, because with my old GTIs, torque steer really was a thing, and sure, you could throw a limited slip diff in it, but this E-diff is one of those things that really sorts the dynamics of this new GTI. The steering isn't perfect. It's perfect for me. It does exactly what I want it to do, but I think some people would definitely argue for more steering feel, because a lot of that is filtered out with an electrically assisted system, and this filters out a lot of noise as well, but overall it does exactly what I want it to do, minus a little bit of road feel. Still, there's actual weight to it, a little bit of feedback, but the real communication comes in through the chassis. And through chassis feel, I can feel what the front tires are doing as well as what's going on with the rear. Turn in, you feel the tire bite, the load build, the limit approaching. It's not Mazda MX-5 levels of communication, but it's leagues better than your typical electrically assisted system. Variable ratio means low-speed maneuvers stay easy while high-speed inputs stay stable. At highway speeds, small corrections actually don't upset the car, which is great. At 30 miles an hour through a tight corner, you don't have to cross your arms hand over hand. It's adaptable hardware solving contradictory requirements. Sure, the steering might not be the GTI's strongest suit, but it is competent. I really dig it, and that kind of competence builds trust, and trust is exactly what you need in a hot hatch like this when you're hustling it through the corners. Brakes are definitely a highlight. Lots of power to scrub speed, and that initial application of the pedal gets you just enough bite. And squeeze that pedal and the car scrubs speed immediately and progressively. The big brakes up front provide more than enough stopping power for street use, and pedal feel is linear and consistent, exactly what you want. Modulation, excellent. You can trail brake into corners, manage weight transfer just with the brake pedal alone. This might sound basic, but most modern cars overboost the pedal to the point where you're either braking or not braking with no middle ground. And the brakes here give you progression, control, and feedback, which is exactly what you want in a driver's car like this. And here's what separates good cars from great ones: cohesion. It's not all the individual systems, but it's actually how they all work together. And I think this is the GTI's party trick. Damping adjusts based on road conditions and drive mode. The diff responds to throttle input, steering angle, wheel slip. The steering adapts to speed. The gearbox matches revs and selects gears based on driving style. Even the brakes are in on the electronics-based chat. And all these systems talk to each other through a central dynamics controller, creating a unified response across all systems. You don't feel separate systems activating. You feel a car that responds to your inputs with precision and some predictability. Brake hard, turn in, the weight transfers forward, and the front bites. It's transparent, intuitive, confidence-inspiring. And this is what 40 grand buys you, my friends. Not individual systems excellence, but orchestrated competence across all systems talking to one another. How do you spec yours? Well, I do have some thoughts. For starters, what you are looking at is a 2025 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn. This is a Canadian car, product planned a little bit differently than the US. This is the King's Red metallic paint. Now, these are 2026 prices. Base price in the US is $40,880 at the paint for a total as tested of $41,355. In Canada, base price is $40,895 at the paint for a total as tested of $41,395. And these prices are before freight, taxes, fees, etc. Now here's how to spec your GTI. Start with the S at about 32 grand. It has the same engine, transmission, diff, wheels, and core driving experience as this $40,000 Autobahn. What are you missing? Heated rear seats, ventilated front seats, 3-zone climate, Harman Kardon audio, heads-up display, and adaptive damping. That last one matters. The dampers are essential to this car's dynamic capability. The rest, luxury features that make ownership nicer, but driving no faster. If you're buying a GTI as a daily driver that happens to be quick, the Autobahn makes sense. The refinement genuinely improves the everyday experience. But be honest about the kind of buyer you are, because 10 grand is real money, and that is a lot to pay for a set of dampers. Real question for the comments: would you buy the S, or would you spend 10 grand more on the Autobahn with all of its luxury features and the dampers? The performance difference is minimal, comfort difference is significant, price difference is 10 grand. Tell me in the comments which one you would buy, and bonus points if it doesn't include "it depends." Let's talk about what GTI owners are saying about their actual GTIs after living with them for a few months. Some owners report that this car's electronics drain the battery completely after 3 to 5 days of sitting. Not a defective battery, but it's a normal parasitic draw from the complex systems on board. And if your car is sitting, battery tenders become essential. Also, if you're ordering an Autobahn, brace yourself. Supply chain issues mean some cars arriving without ventilated leather seats, cloth substituted instead, or without Harman Kardon audio, just the bass stereo. And of course, owners say that price adjustments Volkswagen offers don't adequately compensate. Verify your actual equipment before delivery. Here's one interesting thing. Apparently for $80 you can get an OBD2 adapter that unlocks the Golf R digital displays, removes menu and motion restrictions, enables comfort windows via the key fob, and lets you permanently disable start-stop. These aren't hidden features, they're just arbitrary limitations that Volkswagen impose that owners immediately circumvent through this method. And if you're wondering about the long-term potential, a Stage 1 tune on 93 octane delivers 330 horsepower and 390 pounds of torque for $600. That's Golf R power for a fraction of the cost. The engine can apparently take it. Warranty? Well, govern yourself accordingly. And overwhelmingly, owners are enjoying their experience with this latest GTI, and comes as no surprise. No, it's not quite as simple as my Mark IIs, but the way this thing drives in 2025, well, it absolutely makes me want to be a hooligan when I'm behind the wheel. My verdict, well, let's start with fuel consumption, and I'm getting about 25 miles per gallon or 10 liters per 100 kilometers without even trying. I'm just enjoying 100% of the GTI, and I'd love to know what owners are getting in the real world, so let me know in the comments. I really appreciate it, because my numbers definitely not scientific. As for the GTI being front-wheel drive, was Volkswagen lying? Was I lying? Because this is a different kind of beast. It's still front-wheel drive, and the front wheels do all the driving, but in 2025, front-wheel drive doesn't mean what it used to mean. That diff, the electronic systems, the brake-based torque vectoring, adaptive damping, they've rewritten the rule book. They've taken architecture with fundamental limitations and found workarounds that actually work. And I don't think it feels like any other front-wheel drive car either, and that's the point. The lie isn't that this is front-wheel drive. The lie is thinking you know what front-wheel drive means anymore. This is 241 horsepower, 273 pounds of torque, zero torque steer, neutral handling balance, and a limited slip diff that learns as you drive. Sure, it's front-wheel drive technically, but the GTI proves that labels don't mean what they used to. And I'm not sure if that's progress or something's been lost in the translation, but either way, this thing is properly quick. This GTI Autobahn costs a little over 40 grand, makes 241 horsepower, handles incredibly well, makes me want to drive like a hooligan every single moment I'm behind the wheel, and is one of the best all-around performance cars you can buy today. It's quick enough to embarrass most traffic without threatening your license. It's practical enough to be your only car. It's refined enough not to punish you daily. It's competent enough to reward you when you're in a mood to push. Relative to GTIs of old, it's also expensive, heavy, and increasingly disconnected from the original GTI ethos of lightweight simplicity. But here's the thing, the world that created that original GTI doesn't exist anymore. We have safety regulations, emission standards, technology expectations, and consumer demands that make 1,800-pound hot hatches impossible. This is the best GTI Volkswagen can build today given those constraints. And judged on those merits rather than nostalgia, it's exceptional. And no, this GTI isn't perfect, but it's very, very good, and sometimes that's just enough. Now, we've spent this episode discussing whether this is still a GTI in the traditional sense or whether it's evolved into something else, and I'd like to know what you think, so let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks for hanging out with me for this episode about the 2025 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you enjoyed this kind of analysis, make sure you subscribe and do me a solid and hit that like button as well. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.